people who are here, and I'm really, really happy. See, Lori Berman, Didi Schulman, can you show me your face? It's been a long time. Can you? No, maybe not.
Oh.
All right.
Sorry.
At least, Didi, know that we miss you. And maybe you'll come back on Saturday mornings. We'd love to see you.
You could really
Not that I'm selling, but you know, I see Herb and Sylvia. Hi there. Al
So these people are missing
They just have their
name.
Okay, Gail Wall. Gail, are you new, or is my mind as failed as I think it is? What happened to Gail? Oh, there you are. Hi, Gail. You're muted. Okay, unmute yourself. Okay, so you can say hello.
Oh, yeah, and hi. No, I'm new to LA. I've met some people virtually. That's basically how I have met people through the temple. And my husband and I recently joined the temple and have been virtually involved. So we moved here from the East Coast in January of 2020.
Where in the East Coast?
New Jersey, the Bergen County.
Sure. Okay. Okay. Hi. Welcome, and we're really glad to see you.
Thank you for welcoming me. I appreciate that. My husband may appear at some moment, so, but we're happy to join the group.
That's great. And Cindy Lederer obviously has you in mind, and she will contact you.
Yes.
Already done.
It's already done.
It's done.
She came to our last sisterhood meeting.
I thought she looked familiar, yeah.
Right.
Okay, I think that's wonderful. Okay, now we're here, and I never promised you a rose garden. That is to say, last time we met, we had a great conversation, and everybody. Hi, Miriam Alpern.
Hi there. I might have to leave early. I'm very sorry.
I'm glad you're here now.
Thank you.
Okay.
You have a note from your mommy?
I'm very glad.
Okay, so last week we had this really great conversation. Everyone was participating and pushing and pulling. But I did say in the course description, every once in a while, we have to actually learn something so we can continue our conversation. So let me go back a little bit. Last year, I taught a course at Wilshire on Hakarat HaTov, actually Musar, Jewish ethics. Musar course went very nicely. One of the concepts that we had was Hakarat, Hakarat, HaTov, recognizing the good. And we described that there are all kinds. I have to say that I don't have to be careful on this call, right? We don't have to be careful, so forget that. Okay, so Gail, you have a company. Do you want to introduce the gentleman to your rear? You have to unmute.
Chuck, not I.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Here, move in a little bit so you can say hello.
Hi, Chuck. Good
Hi,
afternoon.
Chuck. Stan Davids. Welcome, and we're really glad you folks are here. So, okay. There are people who are known for being not nice people, and they do not nice things. Hakarat HaTov, as a Musar value, a value of Jewish ethics, says that to really elevate yourselves, ourselves, we have to be able to find the good even in unpleasant people. I have to tell you, that is not easy. Risa and I last night watched the 4th of 4 sessions on the Bill Cosby documentary. And we were caught up in a hakarat hatov dilemma. 1980s, we so remember, greatest comedian on everywhere, making millions and millions of dollars a year, America's dad, and a rapist. And the question comes up, can you praise the rapist for the beautiful laughter that he created on his television show? That's just putting it out there. I mentioned last year that Al Capone, one of my favorite all-time gangsters, Al Capone funded food kitchens. Yeah, should we praise Al Capone, who had a penchant for machine gunning all kinds of people, for his soup kitchens? Or Charles Dickens was cruel to women. Today, there might be a real battle over whether we should read Charles Dickens because he is an acknowledged harasser of women. I'm going to go on, Steve. Let me just finish a little bit here. I'm on a run. James Watson, you know James Watson, and very famous. He was a racist. He would actually, it's really not fair. He was fine with all races so long as they were white. And you know, that worked out okay. Thomas Watson, IBM. Thomas Watson with IBM sold technology to the Nazis, said technology was used to murder Jews. What do we do with Thomas Watson? Hugo Boss, someone whom I would like to have in my closet. Hugo Boss made loads of money during World War II as the specialty tailor for Nazi uniforms. So does that mean, oh, what a gorgeous tie, Hugo Boss, woo? No, he helped the Nazis. Or the cancel culture of today. What do you do with it? Are you allowed to say good things about notoriously bad people? And the challenge in Musar is, can I find something good to say about someone who is bad? The Musar approach says you must try. You must try. And even of the homeless person on the beach, even of the person on the airplane who pushes their seat back so far that your knees are up against your chin, right? Even that person whom, if you would ask, would you please lift your chair a little bit? No, I'm going to sleep. Boom, off we go. And that, can you find something nice to say? The Musar image of Hakarat Hatov. Today, I am going to praise Donald Trump and his political support team. And that's why I did this introduction. Okay, now we'll take a couple of questions and then we'll dive into why the rabbi wants to praise Donald Trump. Steve, then Ray, and Harvey.
Every example you picked actually contributed something. You could find something. But you don't even have to go to, say, Hitler to find a person. There is no such thing. Look at someone like Bernie Madoff, who didn't take his ill-gotten gains and help the community, help charity. No, those were the people that were where he went to obtain all of this money wrongfully. There are people where I don't know how you apply it when there is nothing they did that had a positive effect on anybody.
Okay, we're going to hold with that. I'm not going to debate it. It's a point. Hakarat HaTov says to strengthen your own moral fiber, you have to be able to find something positive to say about even the least. By the way, I'd like to welcome Irvin Rubin. I see him. Hi, welcome, welcome. Ellen Bornstein is here. We continue to grow. Okay, I had other hands up and I forgot. Whom did I say next? Okay, Harry. Okay.
Okay, how do you square this with the teaching that you should avoid wicked people and have nothing to do with them?
Why do I have to square it?
Well, it's a teaching, a Judaic
Sure.
teaching.
First of all, I think you ought to talk to Mara. She'll straighten you out on that. And secondly,
She already has.
oh, sorry. Harvard's a real question. And I'm going to say to you, gam v'gam. Both. Both. It is better for us to be able to clear our minds and recognize something good in the most rotten person, if only to enlarge our understanding of humanity. That's a Musar teaching. I'm not asking you to agree, and that's fine. Ray.
Yes, I want to start by challenging the foundation of Hakarat HaTov and the need to elevate oneself by finding good in people. I would question what the authority is. In this week's parashat, we learn that 3,000 Israelites were killed because they worshiped idols in public. That follows the incident at Sodom and Gomorrah, Sodom, as well as the flood. So what is the basis? What is the basis for this Musar? Because we certainly don't see it in Torah, at least not to
By
date.
the way, let's put it into this week's parsha. It's also the golden calf.
Exactly 1,000 were killed.
Yeah.
God did not struggle to find an ounce of goodness in the 3,000 that worship the golden calf.
Yes.
Where does this Musa doctrine come from?
Not from that.
And why are we giving it any credence?
Not from that part of the Torah. And by the way, I don't like being pushed at. I'm the teacher here. When I say something is true, the rule is it's true. Okay. Secondly, you're very correct. The visiting the iniquities of the fathers upon the children for the third and fourth generation is in the Torah. That's having a little bit higher. I mean, like these kids are damned by virtue of genetic affinity. In the rabbinic materials, you have a different kind of ethic evolving. And that's just really it. It is not the ethic of much of the Torah. It does say, by the way, in the Torah, that if your enemy's, how do I remember these things? If your enemy's donkey is overloaded and crouches down, can't stand up, you're supposed to go over and help because your enemy is still a human being and that animal is still a creature of God. And you're supposed to respond to them. But you are correct that the Musar literature roots itself in the rabbinic materials, forces itself to find support in the Torah, but it has to force itself to do it. The Musar movement is late 18th century, 19th century, very strong, and is a very powerful Jewish ethical movement today. and they work with this. So I can't, you're right. You're right, but Judaism evolved in many ways beyond where the Torah was on this issue. And I would,
Sounds like,
I'm sorry?
it sounds like 18th century wokeness to me.
The timing is right.
Okay.
I don't want to get into family counseling, Reese. I'll just talk to you and no one else should listen. Reese and I had serious battles over Trump because every once in a while, something would happen which I felt was a good thing. And I would say, he should get credit for that. And that's when Reese started screaming at the television off with his head or something like that. So we do have different approaches. And we'll leave it there. Okay, Merle. I can't hear you, Merle.
Okay, there I am. I'm using a different device. I'm trying to learn how to work it. You know, I want to put this in very recent times, and I know you don't want to do family counseling, and there's no family counseling to do here, but we have a relative, Arnie's cousin, who for 50 years and plus has been, I would say, whenever we're around him, he has issues with someone. And you mentioned Trump, and I'll say that he is such a diehard Trump fan that it scares us. It terrifies our grandchildren and friends of the family who have recently moved here and have had to deal with him. And I have been depressed for every holiday of 50 years because we have every holiday at our house. So 6 months ago, he and our daughter, he's got some health issues, but we don't know what the real health issues here are because they change hourly. 6 months ago, he had a huge fight with our daughter. And basically, he and his daughter has some huge issues with health, drugs, and we don't even know what else, to be honest with you. The daughter disconnected us from everyone in our whole family, or attempted to.
Okay, I'm going to ask you to focus because we really.
So the focus.
I'll give you an hour later.
Okay,
That's not
so
a problem.
the focus is, after all this and realizing how all the rest of the family feel, which isn't good. He tried doing some stuff to the girls over their birthdays the last few months, and we've tried really hard to teach the girls that before this last 6 months, there was good stuff. As much as we didn't want to say that, we felt they had to know it. And they look at us like we're morons saying, but all this bad stuff has happened, and he plays us against each other. And so I think they finally get it, but we've all said in the process of this whole last 6 to 8 months that we're all trying to find something good.
Okay.
But we're not finding the good as much as we feel like we should.
Okay, I'm going to hold on the topic. I wanted to introduce Hakarat Tov as a prelude to our discussion of the Abraham Accords, one of the most successful undertakings of the Trump administration. And I want to praise it, and I want to frame it within Hakarat Tov, in which our attitudes in general about the former president should not blind us to, in this particular case, significant, important success. That's all I'm trying to say. Steve, quickie, then I'm going to dive.
I just want to agree with you on Trump and say, if we don't do it that way, we sink to their level, and then we're like there. It doesn't matter what you do, you're condemned, and we will never be able to conduct proper politics if that becomes everybody's approach. When you move the embassy, you get credit. When you support white racists, you get condemned. And you have to show that we are willing to look at the individual actions and not just condemn everything you do no matter what. Or we
Okay, and this is Hakarat Tov. And I'm there, and you gave a beautiful example. And another thing, again, with the Trump administration, I am totally in favor of the move of the U.S. Embassy into Jerusalem. I think that was long ago. That's me. Remember, we're talking. It doesn't matter. You all disagree. I don't care. I think it was a great thing to do. It was necessary, long overdue, and he did it, and his predecessors did not. And I'm willing to say that. I'm just willing to say it. Let me go into this. Isaac Herzog. Okay, I've said the name Isaac Herzog. Please raise your hand if you know who that person is. Isaac Herzog. Okay, Isaac Herzog is the president of Israel. And shortly after we visited him, he lost his mother, who was a giant in Israeli political life. And then Herzog received an invitation to go to the United Arab Emirates at the invitation of the ruler of the UAE. And all around the world were pictures of President Herzog shaking hands with, being in the presence of the top leaders of the UAE, United Arab Emirates, with the beard of mourning. That's why I mentioned it. He won't shave during his period of mourning, and he wasn't going to shave just to meet the ruler of another country. That made me really, I felt happy. I'm sad he lost his mother. But, okay, I'm coming out looking scruffy because I'm in mourning, and that's what we Jews do. Glad you asked. Okay, now he's there. They had great visits. They visited Abu Dhabi and Dubai, and they met with all the foreign ministers and so forth of that, and the business sector and the Jewish community. And during this process, Herzog said, quote, "I am bringing with me a blessing of peace and a message of peace to the entire region, to the peoples of the region. Peace will bring with it prosperity, progress, and growth for the benefit of all the peoples of the region." Wow. Yeah, you have to be able to say wow to that if you realize that there has been no formal political contact between Israel, the UAE, Abu Dhabi, Dubai, nothing. And now the president of Israel is doing that. How did it happen? And it happened because of something which I really hope you'll hold on to, something known as the Abraham Accords. Abraham, Accords, the Abraham Accords, which are a series of treaties. The Abraham Accords, a series of treaties normalizing diplomatic relations between Israel, United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Sudan, Morocco. These treaties were brought about. I'm getting a little bit of feedback in here. I'm not sure what it is. Okay. I am going to, maybe my phone is talking to me. The President of the United States, President Trump, and most especially his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, supported by Bibi Netanyahu, helped organize, support, and in 5 months, 4 Arab countries joined Egypt and Jordan in making peace with Israel. Folks, we have to hold on to that. Sometimes we don't know what's going on outside and we miss it. Israel was able to make peace with 4 additional countries in a period of 5 months because of the Abraham Accords. Who wants to give me? Here's a slam dunk. Why was it called the Abraham Accords? Why did they call it the Abraham Accords? Why? Why? Come on. You can do this. Abraham Accords. Why they call it that? They are all, oh, Cindy?
I assume because Abraham is the patriarch of Jews and Muslims.
Yes, indeed. These are accords for the children of Abraham. Jews, Muslims, to do that. Yes, fascinating. I want you to know, though this is not such a big deal, but Jared Kushner has been nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize for his work in bringing this about. For some of you, that may be enough to cause you to run screaming into the kitchen. I know that.
You ready to go? Yeah. Okay.
I saw Susie and I saw her blood pressure go straight through the roof. But I'm not going to mention names. You know, fine. That happened.
Fabulous.
Unbelievable. Now, what about, for example, UAE? Why did it happen? United Arab Emirates. Both countries, Israel, UAE, want to strengthen their economies, and the best way to do it is with neighbors, right? To do it with neighbors. They want trade. They can't do it without peace. They want to be able to force Israel to stop what Israel proclaimed to be its intention to annex the West Bank. I want you to remember that a year ago, Bibi was moving toward annexing the West Bank as part of Israel and totally shutting down a 2-state solution. And the UAE said, we are interested in doing a peace treaty with Israel. Israel must not annex the West Bank and make it part of sovereign Israel. So the agreement led to diplomatic ties, and since then, culture exchanges, grassroots cooperation, and the accords. This is so Israel. Since the accords were signed, 130,000 Israelis have visited Dubai. It's a small country, Israel. They got to get out. And so the moment that they had a peace treaty there, Israelis went running to Dubai and the UAE. I find that fascinating. The Bahrain signed a similar agreement in 2020. Since then, Bahrain and the UAE and Israel have formed a united front against allowing Iran to develop nuclear weapons. Do you see how the political payoff works? Mm-hmm. But it took a real breakthrough. You must know about the Abraham Accords to be able to talk about this. Mm-hmm. Now, Sudan has a problem because that's the newest almost democracy in the area, and they're worried more about internal factors than they are making formal deals with Israel this week. Morocco has a long tradition of positive relationships with its Jewish community and with the state of Israel. But for Israel, under the table, for the Jewish community of Morocco, well known, the king was very, very supportive. The Moroccan government has made efforts to preserve Jewish history, welcome Moroccan Jews back to visit. very warm, but they were never able to sign a peace treaty. Now they signed the Abraham Accords. Morocco is officially in a peace relationship with Israel. That's huge. What did Morocco get in return? Because that's the way these things go. There is disputed territory in the Western Sahara. Morocco claims it. Rebels are trying to break it free to be independent of Morocco. Morocco signs the Abraham Accords. The United States agrees to support Morocco's position on who owns this large hunk of territory in the Western Sahara. Very controversial. The Obama administration never would have agreed to it. There it is. Last point, before we go into a little discussion of, gee, you know, it's not the way I understood Israel as the isolated island in the Middle East. How did the Palestinians react to the Abraham Accords? Someone want to come up with a guess or two? We do guesses. Anyway, okay, Steve, quick guess.
Negatively, because they were losing all the support that they had, and people got tired of supporting them when they were fighting Israel, making no progress towards peace, and it seemed like all of their support was gone. If everyone was going to start dealing with Israel, whether or not they had peace with the Palestinians, that wasn't going to be good for them.
Okay, let's go on. Is there anyone else who wants to make a comment about what do you think the Palestinians, how they reacted? Okay. The Palestinian Authority called the UAE-Israel agreement, quote, a total betrayal, serving the Zionist narrative. The reaction in the Arab world to the Palestinian reaction was an unprecedented and harsh public criticism of the Palestinian leadership. So throughout the Arab world, now we're not talking Iran, we're not talking Syria, we're not talking Lebanon, but throughout the Arab world, there was severe criticism of the Palestinians for their obstruction. According to a poll by the Palestinian Center for Policy and Survey Research, I quote, Palestinians described their feelings toward the Abraham Accords as treason, abandonment, and insult. Period, close quote. That was my first piece of, okay, we're doing current events. We all need to be on the same page as to what the Abraham Accords are. Open for discussion, comments, good, bad. Some people are really attacking what Morocco got and so forth. Others got. By the way, there was also increased shipment of military arms to several of the signatories to the Abraham Accords. So there were guns, there were diplomatic relationship, there was support, all kinds of prices paid so that they would enter into a peace, not a ceasefire, a peace agreement with Israel. What do you folks think about selling peace for guns, peace for diplomatic recognition, et cetera, et cetera? How do you feel? Okay, I am open. The door is open for your comments. We can pause for a commercial. Joanne, we can pause for a commercial. Or how do you feel about this?
I have something.
Who's there, please?
It's Merle.
Oh, Merle.
I'm where I'm stuck is on your last statement. They got arms to create peace. They were given arms to so that they would sign this peace agreement. But not everybody, just because their government approves, doesn't mean their whole state or country approves. And you've got human nature in there, that human nature may have a hold of some of those arms and say, I'm using them to hell with the peace agreement.
By the way, that's a brilliant insight. Governments may sign, but people who have been at war and taught to hate Israel for 70 plus years, do they switch just because
They got something for it.
Yeah, so a problem. Thank you for that. Great. Any other comments? Any other comments? How do you feel about your country making those deals to bring a peace agreement for Israel? Steve?
I was also in response to Merle's comment. I think the further you move away from Israel, where you're not on the border, you haven't been in a war, I think that it was more rhetoric for the average person than something ingrained like it may be among the Palestinians. So for the overall good of their society, personal benefit, government, trade, everything, I don't think it's quite as hard. Now, if you want to do that in Syria or even parts of Jordan or the West Bank, that's a whole different story.
Good. Israel, of course, does have a lukewarm peace with Jordan.
Right.
Lukewarm. One of Jordan's real problems is that the majority of people sitting in the Jordanian parliament are Palestinian. So that's a real issue. So it is a tepid peace, though a peace. Anyone else want to jump in? How you feel about this? Did Israel do the right thing? Did the United States do the right thing? Should Trump and Jared Kushner be celebrated for those achievements, for the Abraham Accords? Harv?
Yeah, I think you have to look at the arms sale as part of the big picture with Iran looking down on these other little countries.
Good.
And if we gave them defensive kind of arms, which I thought we did mostly, except for some of the planes, again, the planes are probably defensive. I think overall, it helped push them into the deal. And overall, I think it's probably a good thing in light of where Iran stands. That's my opinion.
So it's interesting. So in making a diplomatic move, you got to get in the swamp. I mean, I know that's an ugly way to put it, but you got to get in the swamp. And the administration, U.S. administration, got in the swamp. Anyone else want to offer some thought about the Abraham Accords? I am asking you now in all your conversations about Israel to be able to reference that and to move past the notion that Israel is a solitary boat in a storm of angry great white sharks. It's no longer quite that way, and that's a good thing. Anyone else want to offer anything? If not, we're going to move on. Okay, point 2 for today. I think it's scarier to be a Jew in the United States today than it has been in many decades, going back to the 1950s, maybe the 40s and 30s. I really think that we are in a very difficult time. I'm not going to list all the assaults on American synagogues and so forth. I mentioned campuses. One of the fastest growing businesses in the Jewish organizational world is creating trained cadres of students to be able to respond to anti-Semitic events on their campuses. It is everywhere. It is everywhere. And places where we once did not encounter it, like NYU, places like that have flipped and become very troubling places for Jews to be. Kids have to be careful going to services at Hillel or Chabad on Friday evening or Saturday morning. They have to make a decision whether they'll wear a kippah or a talit, boy or girl, or whatever, to go to those services. They have to be very wary of being self-identifying. One of the great things that I have participated in for more than 60 years is Alpha Epsilon Pi fraternity, the only still standing, powerful Jewish fraternity in the world, which is now feeling pressure from some of our chapters to eliminate the Jewish specific identity, because reading about that and having other students find out about that is making the lives of some AEPI brothers on some campuses endangered. Did you hear me? Endangered. By the way, that's not going to happen, but it's there. Hundreds of anti-Semitic flyers claiming that COVID-19 is basically a Jewish plot were distributed throughout Florida the past few weeks. Similar flyers were distributed in Colorado, Wisconsin, Texas, California, and Maryland. Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the scion, S-C-I-O-N, of a powerfully liberal family, political. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. invoked Nazi Germany in his anti-vaccine speech, fully equating the move to require vaccination as the moral and ethical equivalent of what happened in Nazi Germany. Chuck Schumer has been pushing to get Congress to fund $360 million more for security for our synagogues. You hear that? Deborah Lipstadt has now been able to be interviewed, has still not been approved to become the ambassador to the world on matters of anti-Semitism. There is no one more qualified, and people just don't feel the pressure. The last thing, Maus, M-A-U-S, and everyone knows what happened with the book Maus and having it removed from the required reading lists of a school district in Tennessee, and for the most specious, insulting of reasons. One of the good things is that several foundations have come forward and are distributing Maus free in that town to all who ask. And I think that's pretty funny. And that's a pretty good thing. I'm going to stop there because that's my point. I think that things are going poorly. Okay, I see. Ray.
I see a parallel, Rabbi, between your earlier comments about the Abraham Accords and the increase in anti-Semitism, and much of the anti-Semitism, particularly on campuses, is the result of Palestinian activists. And as the peace movement that started with the Abraham Accords moves forward, and the Palestinians become more and more isolated, the Palestinian activist-driven anti-Semitism may wane. So I think the efforts that were started there with the Abraham Accords may actually be part of the solution that we may see in reducing at least a part of anti-Semitism that is prevalent on the campuses today.
Point of personal satisfaction. I just would like to thank you for your referencing the Abraham Accords in your response, because that's what I was trying to make available for people to do that. Yes, and thank you for your comment. Merle.
So 50 some odd years ago, when Arnie and I were students at University of Arizona in Tucson, Arnie was I think the president of the time of AE Pi fraternity. And across the street was Sigma Chi fraternity. And there wasn't a day that goes by that Sigma Chi, who was very anti-Jewish, didn't harass them, sometimes some pretty potentially violent issues. And it forced AE Pi to move to a safer part of the school on the other side of the campus, where they were surrounded by fraternities that were more supportive of AE Pi being a Jewish fraternity. And it's still in that part of the campus, but I don't ever forget the fear of walking to the fraternity house. What was Sigma Chi going to do if they saw a person, whether you were Jewish or not, walking into that fraternity house?
Yeah, I would be singing "Sweetheart of Sigma Chi," but I'm not gonna do that.
Yeah,
Okay,
don't go there.
I'm not gonna go there. Lisa wouldn't permit it. Steve.
I'm not sure how much there's more anti-Semitism. I think there have always been many anti-Semitic people who've always had these beliefs. I think that along with many other groups, including Proud Boys and whatever, for some people are more emboldened to actually act on these beliefs and create more of a actual physical danger for Jews. And that's what the biggest rise is in, rather than on people's beliefs.
Okay, that's very interesting. By the way, that's academically debated, and it's certainly what you're offering is a very strong point. I do remember, and I assert with confidence, that anti-Semitism that was booming in the United States in 1930s only was pushed under a rock because anti-Semitism was associated with Nazism, and that couldn't be. But you're right, it didn't wipe it out. It pushed it under a rock. And today, hi Talia, today the rock is lifted and the critters are out. Other comments on this is an unusually difficult time to live openly as a Jew. Comments? Agree, disagree, thoughtful, attack, anything. Attack is good. No other comments. I'm gonna go, Diane, I'm gonna ask you out of respect, because I know you, I'm gonna ask you, do you feel in your life, in your world, in the newspapers and news that you encounter a more difficult time to be Jewish? And if you unmute yourself, you can tell me to mind my own business. I don't hear you. You're still muted. Yes,
I don't think it's more difficult to feel Jewish. Feel Jewish is something inside my soul and who I am. I think my children and my grandchildren are more aware that they are Jewish and a little bit more uncomfortable today than they might have been 5 years ago. That's how I feel.
thank you, Herman.
For many, many years, I can't even count how many, I wore a kippah 24/7. I stopped wearing it last year. Why? Fear. F-E-A-R. Simple. It's a shame. I don't deny that I'm a Jew, but it's a shame that I have to feel this way in this country. And yet I will not walk down the street any longer with a kippah on my head.
Thank you, Susie.
I live in Santa Monica, West LA, Brentwood. That's about my geographic Southern California activities. I don't know if anybody else feels the same way that I do, but I don't think, for me, anything has changed. I don't feel uncomfortable. I have many not Jewish friends. I have many African American friends. And when you talk about this, I feel sheltered. I feel like, my God, maybe I should get out someplace and see what things are really like. But I don't know. Does anybody? You all live on the West Side. Do you ever feel it in the markets or in the stores or on the streets or the parks or whatever?
Thank you.
I mean, maybe we're just really lucky.
Okay, it's quite a challenge. Diane, are you put, no? No, okay. Okay, I'd love to get more people responding. 2 people, Ray, Merle.
Yeah, I think what we're expressing here with concern about anti-Semitism is part of a bigger problem with the increased crime in this country. And I think that's the result of political decisions that state and local leaders have made, particularly not keeping people in jail on bail and reducing the felony limit to $950 in California for shoplifting. We see repeatedly smash and grab robberies in malls and stores. And one's left with the opinion that lawlessness prevails in this country. And when lawlessness prevails, it's not far from smash and grab robberies that are unprosecuted to attacks on Asians and Jews, because the criminals get the impression that anything goes.
They won't be punished.
Okay, I'm going to go to Merle, then to Al Feingold. Merle?
Living in Arizona, we see it a lot. And to see, and this isn't just since the Texas situation a few weeks ago, to walk into Temple, whether it's for Sunday school, some event or services, and to walk into Temple and see armed guards, like with Uzis outside the front door, and having to make reservations to go to services so they know how many people and who is there. It's not just about COVID anymore. I feel, and Sharon, our daughter, who's 44, went through this in grade school, middle school, and high school. So that hasn't changed either. And it's disturbing when a 9-year-old and an 11-year-old come home from whatever program they're at, whether it's school or some activity that they're at, somebody asking, if they wear a camp sweatshirt. Somebody's saying, like, you're wearing a camp sweatshirt that's got something Jewish on it. Why are you Jewish? They shouldn't have to, it hasn't changed, and they shouldn't have to answer these questions. And they're very excited when they're at Temple. They feel more safe at Temple than they do in other places.
Thank you. Al Feingold, you made a comment. I'd love to have you elaborate on that if you're willing. Are you, Al?
I'm Lana.
Oh, okay.
My husband isn't home and he didn't change the thing. And I don't know how to do stuff, but I'm managing.
Okay, that's
What's your
great.
question?
Good job.
See, you posted selling guns can come back at you. It's dangerous.
Yes. Okay. So who's to say I'm first of all, thank you for opening this up, and I'm delighted that I'm part of it. The problem with weapons is that you never know whose hands they're going to get into. And we've seen this in Israel. We've seen it in many, many places. And I guess I'm kind of at a part of don't trust anybody.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Don't trust anybody. Part of that, and I'm not going to go deeply on this, but part of this occurred when Pakistan began selling nuclear weapons into the Middle East. And Pakistan was selling the arms, they said, only to governments. But they were selling the arms to governments that were unstable. Who's to say that 6 months from now, that government won't be overthrown and those arms will end up in the hands of terrorists? So having the arms out there, yes. I am going just because we're at 12:59. Talia, do you want to make a quickie and then we'll wrap?
Hi. Yes, I think that it's unfortunately for Jews, it's a matter of religious persecution still, because it doesn't matter if you're like Ethiopian Jew or if you're dark skinned, it's a judgment of what your belief system is. And I hate to say it, but it's a tale old as time. And I don't know, because it's not like we're marked by, a physical attribute that says we're Jewish. It's not like that. It's not like an ethnic thing. It's almost like just the religious thing that people can't wrap their heads around, and they don't want to. So it's a pickle. And I don't wear my Jewish name because I'm afraid. And I know that's sad. And when I see once in a while someone who does wear their Jewish name, their Hebrew name on a necklace, I'm always like envious that they are brave enough.
I mean, yeah, forgive me for hesitating, but some of these comments are painful. They're painful, and I understand what you're saying. I am going to close with happy news. The Chagall windows are celebrating their 60th anniversary in the Hadassah Hospital. 60 years since Marc Chagall designed, did the artwork, and the windows were installed. And my favorite story is 1973, when Jerusalem was under heavy attack in the October War. A whole bunch of the windows were broken. And the Israeli government immediately sent a note to Chagall. I hope they wrote it in French, but they sent a note to Chagall saying that these magnificent windows, a bunch of them, have been shattered. And Chagall sent back, "You take care of your defense. I'll take care of the windows." And afterwards, he designed and replaced all the windows that were shattered. I'm going to end.
One quick, Rabbi. I presume you're aware that the American Jewish University up on Mulholland is selling its land.
Yes, I'm aware.
The what?
Yeah, oh, we could talk about that, but yeah, I am, as a matter of fact, I am heavily involved in that conversation, and it is very interesting. I want to tell you that tomorrow I will be among a group of people getting a special briefing on what will be dramatic changes, Herman, to the Hebrew Union College.
Mhm.
And if you guys are nice to me, which I don't always expect, I will share the briefing with you when next we meet in 2 weeks.
Mm.
Love you guys. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. This is fun. Good stuff. Thank you very much.
A beautiful day.
Thanks.
Bye,
Bye.
everybody.
Bye.
Thank you. This was wonderful.
Bye, thanks.
Bye, everyone.